This happened about a month ago. I'm doing much better now, and for my future jobs, I will never take night shifts, as the dark alone gives me the creeps. I've applied for many jobs because I'm the legal age for working, as I'm in high school. I'm in desperate need of money, and I need to help my family out as well, so at this point, I would take any job I can get. 5 jobs accepted me, so I decided to do a trial at my first job that was pretty quick enough to accept, which happened to be McDonald's. I need to say that the staff and the manager were all very nice, and my friend also works there, which was a total bonus. The only really downfall working there was probably the customers, which my friend agreed. But anyway, I didn't really know what to pick for the shifts, or even if I wanted the job, so I asked for a practice shift. My manager happily agreed and let me choose my times. Instead of daytime shift, I chose the night, which was a very bad decision, but hey, I needed to see what it was like working there anyway, so this will be easy since it's night, right? Well, I was terribly wrong. I got ready in my friend's uniform that she let me borrow, and she even drove me there. I'll be honest, the McDonald's was rather sketchy. When I say sketchy, I mean there's so many alcoholics and druggies around, and upon arrival it just didn't feel right. During the car ride, I had a gut feeling that it wasn't going to be a good shift, but my friend kept reassuring me that all will be fine. She dropped me off at the bus stop, which was 5 minutes from my workplace, and said that she would pick me up at 12 a.m. It was around 10 p.m., so my practice shift lasts for about 2 hours. I agreed and said for her to pick me up at the same spot that she dropped me off at. As she sped off, I merely watched as her car shrunk into the distance. After I saw it was gone, I started walking towards McDonald's, but while walking, I began to hear footsteps behind me. I didn't really think much of it because it was a normal thing. The person was probably just walking to their car or McDonald's or even the shops, but I had a really bad feeling. I felt like I was almost being watched, and I stopped for a second. The footsteps stopped with mine, and I looked behind to see a guy around his mid-40s just eyeing me off. I got really weirded out as he just smiled at me and then breathed very heavily. He was taller than me and he looked rather stronger and bigger than me as well. He was around what looked to be a few meters away. I quickly looked away and ran off to my workplace. There was only about 3 people working, my manager and my male friend. It was about 10:30 p.m. and I had already had a share of drunken rude people filling the orders up or even tried hitting on me. But he quickly left and shortly afterwards my friend showed up and helped me. He helped me out with most things and I felt rather safe with him. He was actually an acquaintance of mine, but we soon grew to be best friends. After I was done taking some drunk guy's order, my friend pulled me aside and asked if I knew the guy outside. I was kind of confused at what he meant, and at first I thought he was just joking around. That is, until he pointed at the right window. My mouth went dry and my face completely dropped. It was the same creepy guy that was following me before work, but I didn't tell him that. Instead, because I was an idiot, I kinda just laughed a bit and said that it was no big deal. He shrugged it off and we went back into the kitchen. It hit 11 p.m. No more customers were present and the same guy would not stop staring at me. At that point, I kind of just held my head down and just begged, hoping that he wouldn't come in. I could just feel his beady eyes run up and down my body. It was gross. It made me feel dirty. He's been there ever since the start of my shift and has been there for about 30 minutes, making it 10:30 now. I started to panic a bit as I was absolutely begging for him to not come in. In the middle of my thoughts, I heard something. My heart absolutely stopped as I then heard the sound of the door being opened. The creepy guy slowly walked towards my counter, eyeing my whole body until he was right in front of me, heavily breathing and almost drooling. His breath reeked like alcohol and cigarettes. He had a musky scent that, to be honest, nearly made me vomit. Red flags were totally going off, but I just tried to continue with my nice act. He wouldn't stop staring at me. I glanced at my friend who was in the kitchen. He was pretty busy, basically making sure nothing was getting burned. I turned my attention back to the guy and no matter what I asked him, he was silent. It probably went on like that for about 5 minutes straight. That is, until he finally said something.
Such beautiful skin. So young. Short black hair. Such a nice complexion you have.
Before I could even speak or try and call someone over, something I wasn't prepared for then happened. The old guy launched towards me and tried entering the counter part, which happened to be the same part I was working at. He then looked at me like I was a piece of meat. Trying to climb over the counter wasn't easy for him though, eventually trying to grab me and getting stuck midway as I tried backing up. To my luck, I then slipped and totally landed on my butt. I tried my best crawling away, hoping that he wouldn't pass through. I was of course rather startled and afraid to the point that I couldn't even utter a single word. My friend dropped what he was doing as he screamed for my manager to then come over. My manager quickly showed up, which then made the old guy get back up and then flee. My friend quickly ran to my aid and he took me to the back room, which is what my manager told him to do in order to calm me down. Shortly after, we called the cops. I glanced at my friend as he looked pretty pale and rather puzzled, like he saw a ghost. My manager waited at the counter for the cops. That's when my friend quickly explained who the guy was. As it turns out, the guy was known for creeping on the female staff members while they worked. He would take pictures, ask for their number, offer alcohol, and even documented what they looked like. He was actually already banned from even entering the place or even being near it. The cops were already very aware of who he was due to his creepy behavior in the past. After the whole investigation and getting questioned, it was about 1 a.m. and I was let go. My friend was with my other friend while I got questioned, and on my way home, my friend held my hand and kept reassuring me that everything will be fine. Safe to say, I don't think I'll ever go back there again, and after this, I don't think I trust any night shifts. I think I'm gonna work at a different fast food place as well. So to that creepy old guy who's hopefully in jail, please stay away from me. So, a bit of backstory before I begin. This happened in the summer of 2016, and I was currently spending a couple nights alone at home while my parents were away on a trip. I don't live in the nicest of cities, but I live in a relatively nice neighborhood since it's right next to a major university. I've been followed home a couple of times, had neighbors have their homes broken into, and the like. But most of the really bad stuff happens in the downtown area of my city. Anyways, so it was late at night and one of my second nights home alone. It was around 11 p.m. I had been playing some video games with a couple of buddies of mine when I decided to go downstairs and make a late night snack. Cliché setting, I know, but let's continue. When you walk down my stairs, you make a 180-degree turn to walk down a short hallway that opens to my kitchen and living room. When you open the door from the hallway into the kitchen, across from the kitchen table is a set of doors that opens into the backyard. The two doors have giant windows that cover the whole door, kind of like a storm door, I guess. Those will become relevant later. As I go into the kitchen and start making some ice cream, I thought I heard what sounded like laughing. Now at first, I thought it was just my phone, since I had happened to be listening to a scary story podcast at the time. However, as I paused my podcast and waited a second, the laugh came yet again. The sound was odd. The best way to describe the laugh is if you took the Star Wars character Yoda and made it a little bit creepier. It was childlike and playful, yet so deep and sadistic. The laugh repeated again for a third time now, this time a little bit louder. I began to look around, wondering if it was just my mind playing tricks on me. I walked over to the sink where one of the windows that looks out to my backyard was, and all I saw was darkness. There didn't seem to be anything there, but right as I was about to look away, there was a face that appeared at my window. I immediately jumped back and then gasped. The face got closer to the window, and I could now see that it was a man. He had a giant cartoonish smile on his face. He then let out another one of those laughs and walked towards the 2 screen doors next to the sink. He began trying to jiggle the lock, all while laughing and then tapping at the window. I bolted upstairs, locking myself in my room with my bow staff in one hand and my phone in the other. Right as the operator picked up the phone, I heard glass then shatter downstairs, and then I heard that laugh again. That terrible, creepy laugh echo throughout the house. I trembled and stuttered as I told the operator my situation. She told me to calm down and that an officer would be there very soon. As I put the phone away from my ear just for a second, I noticed that it was now silent. I just stood there, the wooden floorboards now creaking as my weight shifted. Then I heard it. That dang laugh. It was pretty quiet at first, but then it got louder. I could hear the man walking up my stairs, the floorboards creaking louder with each step. It got louder and louder, and before I could realize what was happening, he was now at my door. I stayed completely silent, ready for him to come in. He tried the door. The lock jiggled. He began to laugh even more as he started to bound on the door. The bounding got louder as he began to throw himself into the door, the latches now starting to give away. That's when I saw it. The flashing lights. The man let up on the door and he just started laughing that terrible creepy laugh once more. He laughed when the police got upstairs. He laughed as they took him outside, and I swear to God I could hear him laugh as he got into the car. The rest of the story is pretty much a blur. My parents came home early and we got the place fixed up, and the guy was convicted of breaking and entering. I'm almost 18 years old now, and now it's just another story to scare my friends. But still, that's probably the creepiest thing that ever happened to me while home alone. Sometimes I just laugh about it. Other times, it still gives me the creeps. Be careful. So here's some backstory in order to understand everything. This guy, who we'll call S, was a friend of my dad's for years. I say it like that because I'm talking 25 to 30 years, not 3 or 4. He had lived with us various times throughout the first 15 years of my life. Also, my mom's side of the family throws a Christmas party every year on Christmas Eve. It's nothing big, just dinner, adults chatting, and sometimes a few presents for the younger kids. Now for the rest of the story. I'm around 9 years old when this part of the story takes place. We decided to go to the party. We lived easily 2 hours away, so we didn't go every year. This year was one of the many times that S had lived with us, so he came. Everything was fine and normal. S had a girlfriend we had met and said that he had invited her over and that she was on her way. But he was gonna wait outside to make sure she found the right house and asked if I would wait with him. Thank God my mom overheard and said that it was too cold for me to go outside with him, especially due to the fact that I was wearing a dress. He went outside by himself. She never came. During all of this happening, one of my aunts had this pair of boots that she no longer wore and then gave them to me. Now, these weren't like stripper boots. They were brown with large clunky heels and only about 2 inches above my ankle. My dad is very overbearing and protective, and well, the list goes on. He didn't really like these boots and thought I was way too young to be wearing them. We're getting ready to leave and I'm climbing into the very back of the car while S holds the seat down. After I sit down, he looks straight at me and then says like a freaking deranged child,
"I like your boobies,"
and then makes a squishy motion with his hands just a few feet away from me. I cried the whole way home. That night after we got home, we got settled in and my younger siblings went to bed. My mom had me come out and help her finish getting ready for the next day. She had me eat the cookies and drink the milk. While I was doing this, I lose my crap and start bawling my eyes out. My mom obviously notices and asked me what's up. I told her all about S and what he had said to me. She asked me if he could have meant the boots, and then I explained about the hand motions he made to me. She totally flips and then tells my dad, and I retell the whole story to him. A few days later, S moved back in with his mom. Fast forward a few years. I'm now 14 to 15 years old. He was in a lot of trouble and he asked my dad if he could move back in with us. He told my dad that he was drunk that night and he didn't mean what he said, and let it just be in the past. So my dad let him. Now, he lived with us for a very short period of time. I'm talking maybe a year. During this time, I was very close to this dog that we owned. His name was Scooby. This is relevant to the story. Now, Scooby was my baby. He followed me, slept with me every night, and if I went to a friend's house overnight, he was lost. He also never let anyone into my room. He would always growl if anyone got near my bedroom door that he wasn't okay with. Now, Scooby did not like S by any means. For example, one day I was hanging clothes and Scooby of course was laying down by my ankles. He noticed S by the door and then ran over, jumping on the door, barking, snarling, growling, and lunging at the door. My mom thought Scooby was going to break through the glass in order to attack this man. S would try to make conversation with me and, depending on the day, would depend on how friendly I was. I was a pretty moody teen. If I was the slightest bit sassy and my parents weren't around, he'd get angry and then yell at me. He one time threw a pencil at me and told me to watch how I talked to him. One night though, a friend of mine was staying over. She was allergic to cats and I had to make sure that I vacuumed my room, wiping everything off and washing all of my bedding. We ended up going to sleep and then woke up the next morning. I woke up before her and I reached behind my knees to pet Scooby, but he wasn't laying there. I look over and he's curled up in the corner, absolutely scared. I call him over and cuddle him for a little while because he's obviously very scared about something. I then look around trying to figure out what happened. Soon enough, I notice clothespins on my desk. Now, I know dang well that they were not there the night before. I specifically remember because I had to clean my room so thoroughly. I went to go ask my mom, and I noticed that his clothes are hanging outside. I told my mom, my dad, and my grandma. The only one who believed me was my mom. A few months later, S actually stole my 12-year-old little brother's wallet and over $100 that my brother had just gotten for his birthday, and he took off with it. So to S the pervert, you are a total piece of crap. This happened in the summer of 2010 when I was just entering my teenage years. My family took a trip to a really nice hotel in the city. I can't really remember why we decided to take the trip, but I remember a lot of family friends coming with us and staying in adjacent rooms. I've never asked my parents, and it's not really important to the story. To preface, I'm a bit of a scaredy cat and have always been one. I'm a pretty skinny, fragile kid, so I get spooked pretty easily, even now. This, however, was almost definitely not me freaking myself out like I normally did. Looking back, I'm incredibly lucky I trusted my instincts. This hotel had a really strange design to it. The lobby was actually on the 4th floor, not the bottom floor, which I found pretty strange. To access the lobby, you had to use the elevator. There was no way for you to get to it from the stairs. This information would have been nice before everything happened, as you'll find out. The hotel was organized in a square shape. Every floor was lined with a balcony, and you could look down into the lobby and cafe area from your floor. Essentially, if you're walking to your room, you could be seen from anyone that was on your floor if they just stepped out of their room and looked around. I was always afraid I'd fall over the balcony and then sail 8 stories to my death, but they were high enough to a point where I wasn't really concerned for my safety. The first day or two was pretty nice. My friends and I hung out and played cards all day long, or we watched whatever was on TV. At night, we'd explore the halls of the hotel and tell each other ghost stories. It was a really fun time, even though I didn't fully understand why we were there to begin with. On the third day, though, things got pretty strange really fast. I woke up to the sound of screaming coming from outside my door. Now, because of the hotel's design, which I mentioned earlier, sounds from the lobby would echo all the way up to the top of the building. So when I walked outside to investigate, I immediately looked over to the balcony to see what the commotion was about. I saw a girl laying on the ground with eggs and milk splattered everywhere around her. People were rushing to help her, and I heard a couple of people telling each other to call 911. It seemed like the girl was unconscious. Maybe she had passed out or something. I don't know. I scanned the lobby and saw that my family and a couple of my friends were in the lobby getting breakfast, all just staring at the event in front of them. I decided I'd rush down to meet them to find out what the heck happened. The elevator was on the opposite side of my door, so I took the stairwell located right next to my room. We were on the 7th or 8th floor, so I knew I only had to take about 4 flights down. No big deal. I then descended for a little while, looking for the number 4 on the wall, or the letter L. I passed floor 5, ready to find a door to the lobby. I took about 2 more flights of steps before realizing that there hadn't been a door for the 4th, nor had there been a door for the 3rd or 2nd. Now, this is the point where I probably should have turned back, but I decided to continue down because I was really tired and I didn't want to climb back up. There were some really weird side hallways that went into pitch black areas with a bunch of piping and wiring, and though I was really curious to explore, I passed them by. I quickly hit the bottom floor. A dimly lit and cold room with cinder block walls and concrete floors. Right in front of me was a set of double doors. I kind of hesitated at first, but I assumed that this was just another way back to the lobby, so I decided to open them and then entered. Behind those doors was a massive warehouse-type room, probably the size of a smaller basketball stadium. The only light that was coming in was from the stairwell right behind me, so I wasn't really able to see much. Stairs were stacked and covered in plastic wrap, tables lined the wall, and in the distance, I thought I could see boxes stacked and lined against the wall as well. I was probably in the storage room for the hotel. I then looked around and saw that there was an elevator in the back of the room, so I made my way towards it. I closed the door to the stairwell and began to walk in the dim light. The room was super muggy and dusty, and it seemed like nobody had been down there in a really long time. As I got closer to the elevator, I noticed that it was a little bit bigger than the elevators in the lobby and the other floors. I pressed the up button, but got no response. There was also a card swiper next to the button. Must just be for employees, I thought to myself. I turned back towards the stairwell doors, making my way past the chairs and tables along the wall. When I got to the door, I gave it a tug. Locked. Of course. Now, this is when things started to really hit me, and I realized I was stuck in the dark, dusty basement of a hotel. I didn't have a phone because my parents wouldn't let me get one until I graduated middle school, so I couldn't really call anyone. Everyone likely assumed I was still asleep in the room, so I began to freak out, believing that nobody was going to look for me. I searched around the warehouse looking for other ways out. Some of the areas of the place were better lit than others, so I looked around in areas that I could see first before starting on the darker side of the room. There was one other set of doors that I found, but it also happened to be locked as well. I began to cry, scared that nobody would ever find me in this basement. I swear it felt like hours, but I think only a handful of minutes passed before I heard the door creak open. It wasn't the door from the stairwell, rather the second door that I had found. A slim middle-aged man in a lab coat came out of the doors. Now, if this was 21-year-old me seeing this man, I would be very confused as to why this guy was wearing a lab coat in a hotel. But I was only 12 or 13 at the time, so I immediately was very relieved at the sight of an adult who looked smart. I then approached him, tears in my eyes, and he immediately looked very surprised to see me, as you'd expect.
"What are you doing down here?"
He yelled. "I got lost on my way down to the lobby, and I've been locked in here. Do you have a key?" I was shaking, eager to get the heck out of there. He didn't really answer my key question, and instead, he said to me,
"I know a way out of here. Follow me."
He began to walk towards the doors with the stairwell, and I followed, now relieved that someone had finally come to save me. We approached the doors, and I began to reach for the handle, but he continued walking. "Isn't it right here?" I asked him. I will never forget the look on his face when I said that. He looked nervous, and though it was dim, I could clearly see sweat glistening from his forehead and behind his glasses.
"No, this way,"
he said sternly. I continued to follow him, but I was now nervous myself. We passed the door to the stairs, and we were now headed towards a darker side of the basement, away from the elevators. He looked like he had no clue where he was leading me, as he kept checking around him, almost as if he was taking in his surroundings for the very first time. We turned a corner and began walking towards the boxes. A dead end. I immediately froze, now realizing that something was very, very wrong here. This guy had no idea where he was going, nor did he appear to work at the hotel. I then said, my voice shaking, where are we going?" He turned and then said,
"This way. Just follow me."
I knew that there were no doors by those boxes. I had checked there first after I found out the stairwell door was locked. I really want to thank whatever God is up there for gifting me with the idea that I had next. I started yelling as loud as I could. I yelled so loud that I actually gave myself a headache. The man, irritated and plugging his ears, began yelling back at me.
"What are you doing? Be quiet!"
I continued to just yell. I don't even remember how long I was yelling for. Finally, the man snapped and began quickly walking towards me. I went in full sprint towards the stairwell doors, hoping to God they'd somehow be magically open. The man didn't run after me, but he walked sternly behind me, muttering things like,
"Stupid kid,"
and other kind compliments. I was about 5 feet from the door when somebody burst through. My savior. It was a hotel janitor who had heard the screaming from the stairwell. He saw the situation. Me, a child, and some random guy in a lab coat in a locked basement, and immediately told me to get behind him. The janitor asked me who the man was, and I said I had no idea, that he'd come through the door on the other side of the room, and I then pointed to the door. The janitor quickly radioed into the desk that he had found a child in the basement, and quietly so that I wouldn't hear, he then said, "This man came from outside. Get security." The man in the lab coat started trying to argue with the janitor, claiming that he was simply just looking for a bathroom. The janitor clearly wasn't buying it and kept saying things like, "Wait until security gets here and talk to them about it." I was standing beside him the whole time, trying to take in what was happening, totally confused out of my mind. Eventually, an employee from the front desk finally arrived and took me back up the steps to the lobby, where I then met with my family, who surprisingly had no idea that I was even missing in the first place. I told them the story while crying and shaking. They began hugging me so tightly, thanking the hotel employees over and over for their help. I never got to thank that janitor though. Looking back now, I have absolutely no clue what that man was doing in the basement. I don't have any information as to what happened afterwards or who he was. I know for a fact though that the incident with the girl in the lobby was unrelated. Something about low blood sugar. Not really sure. I've thought about that day a lot, and the only explanation that I can put together is that the door that I had found in the basement led to the streets of the city, where he must have wandered in from. I have no idea what his intentions were, why he was wearing a lab coat, or why he chose to pretend to know a way out. To be frank, this could have just been a huge misunderstanding of some sort, and I just really chose a bad time to get lost. But all I know for sure is if I hadn't screamed my lungs out, I might not have been telling the story the same way, or at all. So, To that strange man in a lab coat wandering around a dark, dusty hotel basement, I really hope I never encounter you ever again. Hey everyone. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you have your own personal scary story or experience, be sure to submit them to my website at southerncannibal.com. Stay safe, everyone, and remember to always stay hungry.